So this is the second part of the design evolution of the web. I'm going to browse through it real quick because it is a lot of stuff that's happening now. In the 90s, all of a sudden it came up from 25,000 to 250,000, and a year later it was like in the millions. It went really fast. In 96, the election was one of the big things that was new on the web. Also, Google started in 98, and you see that it hasn't changed much on the core functionality over the years. A big platform called MySpace, think about it like the Facebook of the 90s, but people had more design power. They could change the background pictures and wallpapers. They could upload sound. Your default friend was actually Tom. I don't know why is that some kind of inside joke, but a lot of the pages actually looked as crazy as this. Everything was blinking, and well, eventually it went down, but a lot of took a long time to load, and it was still not at the point where you could have a website where you had just to build like one database for the navigation and one for the headers and things like that. You just wanted to update the content. Frames made that easier, where you could have a separate part for the navigation and for your content. So once you had to update the navigation and you loaded it into each page, it didn't have to reload on each page by itself, or you didn't have to update one of your 100 pages. When you did that for blogs, obviously that helped a lot. There was a great program called Flash. It's still around for games, but most browsers don't really support it anymore. It was great for a designer because it was so easy to animate and being really interactive, but it was contained in itself, so it wasn't open source. So it was a danger that hackers could put malware into the buttons where you clicked it, and it would download something to your computer that you didn't even know why you installed this. I think that was one of the main reasons that it was a security risk, and it was also really heavy on the bandwidth. And with the web exploding so fast, they didn't want a program that would consume that much of the bandwidth. Like here you can see how cool it was to animate. This was my website. You could do blends and like scales and rotations, and now I'm clicking through different pictures, and I could drag these pictures in a timeline. This was when I stayed in Tokyo, and I took like pictures of red dots on the street, and I made a story about that. I also did something about New York, where we stayed in the Lower East Side. When you roll over the pictures here, it shows the different street art that I found, and I did a 360 view of the roof. A game changer was also PayPal, because now you could pay for the product, and as I said before, to really drive development of a bigger market, you need to have some kind of something that makes money and profit there. Fortunate, but something that's free is WordPress. You can create your own blogs, and this made the user the creator, but actual content written, and you could be a self-publisher. WordPress really provided the backbones for creating a blog, and up to this day is like 1/3 of the web runs on WordPress. I'm gonna get into that later. Really important was also JavaScript, because for, let's say, shopping carts, when you click on the product, it would go to the shopping cart, and this step it would have to update something in the database so that you know that this product is in your shopping cart. Now JavaScript and jQuery handle all of these steps. Friendster was something similar. Like Facebook is just a warning, all these platforms may come and go, so don't set all your hopes on Facebook or other platforms these days anyway. So the iPhone in 2007 changed everything again, because now the web became mobile, and it became more interactive in a way where it could detect where you are, and other environmental ephemeral apps were a lot, where it was like in the moment information that you needed. A lot of people this generation grow up only through the phone to experience the web. It used to be that you would go through the desktop in the beginning. Like around that time, Facebook was only meant to be on a desktop because nobody had a portable phone, or if you did, it was rather complicated to access those sites at the time. There was a company called Linden Lab who developed a second life, a cyber life that you could become an avatar in, It was really hot for a second, but I think if you go there right now, you see most of these people don't move anymore. Then we talk about responsive web. Of course, at some point, you couldn't just design a mobile version and a desktop version because there were so many other viewports in between that you had to think of. It was impossible to anticipate that anymore. So you had to design it in sort of chunks that you can put together and that would align themselves to how wide your viewport is, so they would just like fall into place that way. Here's a history of the web. There's one that for a while was really big, or it's still around. Bootstrap was a grid system that you could use for designing in 12 columns, and you would either choose like a grid of 3, 4, 5, or even 12 different setups, but everything became sort of the same look. You can immediately tell this is kind of the Bootstrap kind of look here, but it would save some time to program it. The new thing now is CSS grids, so forget about the Bootstrap, but you have to know it because it will come across. But the CSS grids is the new system to design it, and I think it's much easier for a visual designer to understand that system. It's much more logical, and you don't have to do crazy math and floats and things like that. It's still pretty hard to overlap things, but it's getting easier. This is super large history of the web, starting with Yahoo, then with PayPal. We had mentioned Google, iTunes, Web Store, MySpace. There's also now a trend into a digital by default, where the company's product is actually the digital product, not a physical product. So Uber is not selling taxis, it's just selling you the information to where your taxi is. Content creator platforms like TikTok or Snapchat, and then there's a whole Asian market of Weibo and Alibaba. I didn't even put them there. In the future, though, I think there's one trend that it will become much more connected to other appliances that we're using on a daily basis, like a kitchen or any other household, cars too. So what we're looking in the sort of emerging platforms coming out are artificial intelligence going to play a very big role. It's going to help us finding what we're looking for. It's going to know our preferences. Augmented reality, meaning kind of a mix of the digital and the real life, so we can have it like think about Google Glasses where you can see information on top of where you're looking at. That's going to be another trend. We'll talk about it in a later chapter too.